Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. I just had some afterthoughts about this. I was really wanting the playlist to end. Um, and in terms of I didn't want to make any more content about it because it just becomes redundant. And, it's, I don't have much faith in people being waken up, you know, just from the stuff I do in the truth community. People have made up their minds. And I don't feel like it's my, responsibility to um, keep on trying to wake people up, right? People have made their choice. And with Daaji, they've made their choice for the most part. Like, it's hard to say and it's just because of the cultural things there. I mean, there's some saintly people, some good spiritual people, some of the people that have, when Chariji was there, were flourishing. And now they're not. And, they're just going along because that's part of the culture, the Indian culture. I don't know what they're doing in Europe or whatever. But they aren't willing to, I don't want to say they're weak or soft or something like this. And softness is a part of being soft is positive in Sahaj Marg's system. What you're dealing with is bullies and criminals here. You're dealing with, you're not dealing with just somebody who's, off the rails a little bit. You're dealing with some bunch of people, not just Daaji. Daaji's opened this thing up to scumbags, right? You got scumbags have come into the system, and you got to deal with them differently. And I don't know how. I don't know. Like, if there's a solution there. I'm so far removed from it. I've always been on the periphery. So, but me telling my story about how should have been obvious to me even that it wasn't the guy. Like, back when I went to that gathering and he, and just leaving that gathering in America worse off, limping out of there with my daughter cutting herself. She was on a path towards suicide, and, I was looking for a boost and bringing a new person in there. And that was the new heartfulness. Like, that was the difference between a Sahaj Marg gathering and a heartfulness gathering. The effects, you would never, the gathering under Chariji would never be like that. You would leave with a, feeling boosted, not, you feel like, better. I mean, and that's what's happened with Daaji is you leave feeling worse. I mean, it was even more evident in 2020 when there was supposed to be this mega gathering. There wasn't like this, you've gone to another plane of existence, and that's how it felt when you went to any of these gatherings. And I don't even mean just the ones with Chariji in general. And so, like, it was contaminated already back then. I mean, as soon as Kamlesh took over, it was already starting to fall. Of course, he had his own birthday celebration where he makes bad rules and bad decisions. And incompetence is one thing, but, I mean, incompetence is unmasterly. Because of someone who's mastered themselves, someone who is, a realized soul, where your soul is making decisions, your soul makes good decisions, right? Your soul has wisdom. If you've turned your egos, these are egotistical decisions made by Kamlesh. But then he's let all these people in that are scumbags and all the rest of it, right? And so the lack of support I was getting from the videos was pretty expected, right? Just people weren't, like, people who are listen to my Journey series videos know about all this stuff already. And people who, I've told some of these stories before, and, there was a little bit different contexts, but they already had a negative reaction to Daaji. And new people aren't, like, my videos aren't for new people because they aren't going to be sucked in by Daaji, right? The new people aren't going to fall for him unless they're like in India and they're falling for something else, the celebrity culture, but he isn't bringing in new people. Like, there's just no movement there, right? And, so it's just the people who like Sahaj Marg under Chariji but don't want to see the truth under Daaji. And there's those people. And those people are, there's enough evidence. I mean, they either haven't read the literature and they're unwilling to see, and they're unwilling to speak up. Because there's a culture that, bows to authority, the Indian culture. And that's not my, they're not my demographic here, right? Like, they're not going to, I mean, the disrespect I'm going to show him is totally justified on my part. Like, he's wrecked something that's precious to all of us, him and those scumbags that are around him. And they don't get it. Like, they don't get, how people feel about that, right? I mean, it's only that I believe it's part of a plan that I give them some sort of a pass. And and I'm not feeling anger or hate towards them. Again, because that would wreck my condition. Why should I feel badly because they suck? Like I said back then, why should I quit because they suck? That's why I stuck around, because why should I suffer, I mean, I was feeling like I was connecting to the source through the work that was done on Daaji. That he had all this work to, despite him, because the master of the system, some of the work he's doing is unconscious, right? The master of the system and Abhyasis in general are being used as like antenna and, a focal point. Like if you're a good preceptor, you're being worked on for your whole community. Like it's like you're a 5G antenna for transmission and godly work. Like you're even though you're not conscious of it. And this was made evidence in the Whispers messages. When Chariji was, the Whispers messages that are entitled SE, spiritual entity, are Chariji's soul. And Chariji wasn't aware of the message his soul was given to this medium, which is really interesting, right? And so, like his soul was intercommuning with her, and he was like unaware of it, even as a master. So all of that is interesting. But at some point, I realized that direct connection was the only way, because Daaji was blocking it, right? But in terms of the organization, and people who still want to be a part of it, if you're going to fight this thing, there's no wishy-washy. There's no, step and fetch it kind of, you gotta go in there and you gotta tell the truth. And that's all you can do. Like, verbalize the truth on social media and make it evident that, you're pulling down the veil of illusion. And all these guys who want to pretend Daaji's great and then run these scams, like, talk about it on social media. That's what all these people should do. In a way that they can't suppress it. Like, just not me. Like, the videos that I made and things like that should be a catalyst for giving people courage that you can say the truth, right? And that's what they need, is courage. They need, I mean, there's been intimidation tactics and threats and things, but in the Indian culture, gurus would threaten to curse people if you didn't pay them so much money. And, there's a whole, I mean, the gurus would, and the cronies and thugs around them, the fake gurus, there's a whole thing there. And so they worry about, and Daaji himself has said, if you guys mess with the hierarchy, your soul will be tacked up to Antarctica. Like, he's said these things, and I've, shown you the clips. And so they're worried about speaking up. And then a lot of these people are soft people, a lot of the really nice, saintly people, which is great, and they did great work, and they're devoted. And they're not, warriors in this sense. And, they're not, lions in that sense. They're going to speak up. At some point, you have to speak up, right? You just have to, because something bad has happened here. And it should be, like, just openly out there. And that when somebody searches the term heartfulness, there should be a lot of negative things that are coming up. Where the brand has been ruined by people posted on social media, right? And, so the reason I'm making this follow-up video is, I mean, the reason I took down the videos, and I may search for another place to put them up, it's not really appropriate here, because I want the Gratefulness meditation to mostly be, all things to do with the meditation. I would need to see that the videos would make a difference, in the sense of there would be a lot more positive feedback, just not a bunch of morons showing up on my channel being outraged at things, and just, these stupid people that, I mean, I want no part of. I don't want a relationship with them. I don't want them here. I don't want, we're not cool. I'm not, I'm not part of the organization. I don't like them, respect them, and, go wallow in it, right? I mean, you're all going to suffer. Like, we're all suffering anyway, in terms of the collapse of the, whatever's going to happen over the time. But anybody who's messed with the the purity of the Sahaj Marg system, unless that's your appointed role is to be a bad guy or a villain, which, that's, for some people, that's what their role is. Like I'm sure that I'm playing my role and I'm congruent in it. My role is this for whatever reason. And so I'm, willing to play it, right? Because it's what I'm supposed to be doing. And, it's what I was assigned to do, right? On a soul level. But, for those people who are taking down, maybe this is, like I said, there is a plan here. And this was something that was going to happen. But, everybody doesn't have to go along with it. Like, everyone doesn't have to knuckle under to the corruption. Like, you can call it what it is. Look at evil and speak up and say this is evil, right? This is the opposite of what Sahaj Marg is supposed to be. It's the exact opposite. And I think lots of people sense this or know it, and they just don't want to admit it or whatever rationalizations they're having about it, right? And so they need to speak up. Like sometimes it takes, this is like the emperor has no clothes type of thing. And so there's that. But what was interesting is, the video they copyrighted, I accidentally put up just a clip of something that is just, a Heartfulness video that was posted on the Heartfulness channel. So that's why they could copyright it. It's not like a partial clip or any of these things and, all these ways that, the other videos. But yesterday, the Daaji Truther sent me that exact same clip. He hadn't seen my videos or what was going on here. And he didn't know about it being copyrighted. And somebody else in his, his sphere of these anti-Daaji people had posted the exact same clip on Facebook. It's a clip of Daaji saying, and not knowing the context of it, it makes it even worse. Knowing the context of it makes it even worse. And it was this first gathering where it was Daaji's birthday, his actual birthday. And he told the story of Chariji not liking a Whispers message and slamming the Whispers message down and not wanting to be, tested. And I looked it up and found, and I made a follow-up video that was centered around people saying, oh, you're misleading people. Because I said, Daaji slams Chariji. And the slams was enough for them to copyright the clip because, it was getting lots of views. And they all wanted to say that it was a good story. When clearly he's telling a story where Chariji is painted as having a temper tantrum at the end of his life. And, he would later go on and say that he didn't make it to the brighter world in multiple places. And, so I had all this stuff. I have a video I didn't complete that was going to be a follow-up. And I just lost energy. I'm like, why am I wasting my time doing this, right? It's just, these people are never going to get it. But this video clip that somebody took the video from me, I guess, because I'm the one who clipped it. I made it into a short video. And it didn't come from Heartfulness. It came from the long video of their, the gathering there. And the video got 135 likes. So, and the guy had the title, he put a title on it about it being, it was just a bad look for Daaji because he's having his birthday that he's now trying to say is Chariji's birthday. He doesn't mention Chariji the whole birthday. And when he does, he tells a story that makes Chariji sound bad, which is classic Daaji. But then, so I saw that, and I told the guy, the Daaji Truther, yeah, that's my clip I posted on my video that Heartfulness copyrighted me on. So I'm like, and they're doing that because they know that it makes Daaji look bad and petty. And it's not, it's a lie. It's everything Daaji. He just makes things up, and it shows his hatred for Chariji. But, so that happened. Then somebody left a comment on my video on my normal channel. And he said, there's Sahaj Marg videos, which I thought was an official channel. And it posts a lot of videos of Chariji. And the person wrote, thank you, Sahaj Marg team, for posting these invaluable videos. This is a woman who was on the fence about Daaji because, the big problem for people is Chariji officially appointed him and Babaji through the Whispers messages also said positive things about Daaji. And, they all said he was the chosen successor. And so it's Chariji who made the mistake. And, it's hard for them to get over that part, even though they see that he sucks. And so this woman had showed up on my channel, said the videos were helpful because she was struggling with this. And then I was seeing that this Sahaj Marg video, this is the video from Chariji's recent release of his speech in 2014. And there's about 6 or 7 comments from people who are they came into the Sahaj Marg. They did Sahaj Marg through come find out about through my channel. And so she says this here. Thank you, Sahaj Marg team, for posting invaluable videos of Chariji. As I noticed that nobody talks or remembers the great master anymore. Please let us always remember him and how much he worked for our upliftment. And the person said that is a right observation, and unfortunate at the same time. Those who are sincere can feel him inside and can help talk about him and share what he taught openly with so much love and affection. Let us all remain sincere Abhyasis and follow Sahaj Marg as given to us by the founder, without distortion and changes which may or may not happen in due course of time. Let us remain in gratitude to Reverend Chariji and become better and better Abhyasis, which will be only true Guru Dakshina to the great master. And then there's a second reply by them, the Sahaj Marg team. Your observations are concise and precise and have merit. You have truly expressed from your heart. The only person who can respond to this anomaly is the current president, under whose instructions these things are being done systematically, while deflecting any questions put to him to some messages which can neither be verified nor ascertained in a reasonable way to be true or false. I'm sure that's him saying that Babaji told him to get rid of the Bandaras. I'm sure the bastards in the brighter world would be keenly observing and making note of this, while giving a long rope will act at the right time in an appropriate manner. Well, they're not. Like, this is this is something where there's a test being done for the Abhyasis. Like, this is a test for everybody. Like, or just the organization is being taken down because of people sucking, and just it'll have to be brought back in some way. I'll talk about. Let me just read these comments, and I'll comment on all that. I'm sure the masters of the brighter will be keenly observing and making note of this, while giving a long rope will act at the right time in an appropriate manner. We have to keep our faith, cherish what we have experienced, have deepest gratitude for what we have received, and maybe others making these decisions have not, and we're not merely acting, pretending earlier. Yeah, they were. They were faking it. So we have the Sahaj Marg practice prescribed by the founder, SRCM Sahaj Marg, Reverend Babaji, and is taught by Chariji Maharaj. Those who do contra will have to meet with their fate as the masters may decide. Many feel that they felt and expressed, although they might not be vocal about it, and even more Abhyasis are undeniably in pain and disbelief. I'm sure the agony reaches the masters in the brighter world. As for us, we seek him in our hearts and follow what we were taught without change, corruption, distortions, and he would have liked us, becoming the shining beacons of Sahaj Marg system, SRCM, and there is no need to express any gratitude for this content. It is all his in his service. So then one of my other viewers said this, well said, thank you for the work you do. And then this woman comes back with this, completely agree, and I think her comment got deleted. Completely agree with what you said here. However, gratitude I expressed is not something superficial. It just seems to come somewhere deep within. It takes the former words wherever if I new material videos posted by you all, I promise you all it's not intentional. I always appreciate the dedication towards master's flow through to every post. I always be proud to be in the Sahaj Marg team. And so, that's kind of good, right? This is all. Again, she had another comment that was deleted here, but I'm not sure what had, whatever. I posted that video clip of Chariji talking about all the people around him are scumbags, all his inner circle, and that includes Daaji, obviously, now. And that was, one person who found us the Heartfulness through me and sent me that clip. I'd seen it before years ago. And then I was talking to a guy who was there, somebody who I respect. This is the guy who said that Mr. S is playing a dirty game. And he said that, all those people that Chariji was talking about, Chariji gave this scathing talk. And, and how painful it was to have these clowns around him, these inner circle guys. And these guys were all given better jobs than they deserved and were wealthy millionaires based in the Sahaj Marg blessings from, Chariji's called it from Babaji, but it was from him. And they were donating money and doing work, but everything they were getting was coming from masters of the system, right? They were millionaires in America who came here, made a lot of money, and then they would go to India and be at Chariji's feet and, this whole privileged position. They could walk right in and be with Chariji. And he was basically saying they're scum of the earth, right? And they're arrogant, all these things. And he had reprimanded them, and he couldn't get them to change. I mean, it's, you've seen the video clip. And he said afterwards, the next day they're eating breakfast, patting each other on the back. These were the same scumbags that, I dealt with about the UN, and they don't listen. These guys got to be dealt with bluntly, and I'm, being reserved here. Like, they need a good ass kicking. Like, this is not, and I'm not, not metaphorically. Like, this is, these guys aren't going to hear any others, and they're not going to, just because people are upset or whatever. Like, this is, praying to Babaji or praying to the whisper, the masters of the, this is your job. Like, what are they going to do? Like, from the brighter world, are they going to make the government hold them accountable? No. I mean, they could, but the government there is so corrupt, and Daaji's already got his hooks into the government. He's had Modi at the ashram, right? He's had all these governmental officials. He's rolled out the Brighter Mind scam to them. And there's, India is so corrupt, and, it exists on bribes and all these things. And they've, this is what I've been told by the Daaji truther and people that are there, that they have it locked in. They've got this scam going, and they've stolen Sahaj Marg, and they call it Heartfulness. And they got it, because Daaji's the legal president, and he has all the power. And then he's signed a board of people that support him. And he's got money people in there, and they're running this scam. And they've just dismissed the whole Sahaj Marg aspect of it. And this guy's confirming it. Like, so this person, I've known it now for a while. Should have known it earlier. Like, this guy's just been a scumbag. He sucks. And, it's hard for them to hear me. Like you see how he said it in a much more subtle way. But sometimes you got to put a punk on his back, right? Like, this is not, this is not a time for, like, gentle language and whatever it is. Like, this is just, and, in terms of, that's fine what he said. But sometimes you got to call a criminal a criminal. Sometimes you got to just be, there's no, you got to get out of your comfort zone of whatever. And have all these people speak up, right? It's the people who aren't speaking up that I'm talking about right now. It's, if you haven't spoken up, then on social media and, in mass and lots of people, you're part of the problem. In fact, you are the problem, because, he's gotten away with it. They're going to get away with this thing. But you can do brand damage to the extent that politicians and celebrities and, all these people they're trying to cultivate relationships with, right? They want to make Heartfulness into some kind of it, And again, new people, they don't like Daaji. He has no charisma. People don't like him, right? People aren't attracted to him. They're not, they're not thinking of him as a guru. They think he's a dope. So there's no threat of him bringing in new people. Whatever dumb people that are there oppressed by the ashram, these things. But it's going to be, they're going to lose more people and not be able to bring in more people, right? Like, it's going to hemorrhage money and, all of it. But all these people who aren't, if you've lost enthusiasm, Well, why would you lose enthusiasm if this guy was a real master? Like, you needed Chariji's personality to prop you up? No, it's because this guy sucks, right? And so, you've allowed, I mean, if Sahaj Marg is precious to you, if it's changed you, and you know how good it is, well, then you'd want it around for future generations. And so, make it evident that there would be a way to create new movements, right? Where you would, I mean, the Gratefulness meditation, you guys could do the sittings here and benefit from the same thing that you got before. I mean, that's how I've experienced the sittings and many others. And so you can do that, right? And you can also speak up about it on social media. We have social media now. To the extent that every time somebody searched heartfulness, there would be lots of posts out there talking about how he's a scumbag and all these things. Just, if you've had a bad experience, then post it. And, you can do the stuff anonymously if you're scared or whatever. Like, you can do it anonymously and just, get it out there so that people will, in any social media form where it'll just be there for everybody. And the more people read it, will be like, yeah, I feel the same thing. When people realize it's the emperor has no clothes thing, and the people who are afraid to speak up, or people are, are blaming themselves or having self-doubts or whatever about it, that spiritual people who are introverted often tend to do, blame themselves or whatever, and just, doubt themselves. And the more people that would say it, then the more people would, it would just be out there and at least wreck the brand of it. And, like, make them miserable in their own, where the truth is just slapping them in the face all the time. Where, like, and the idea that they've brought shame on their master and these things. And that, stop going to the gatherings, stop participating. Like, stop thinking that, there's something there for you. It's not there. Like, you can get the same thing at the comfort of your own home because, it's, even if you're feeling transmission with Daaji, it's not coming from him. The master's divine hierarchy are giving it to sincere people. But at some point they just cut it off. And it just won't be there anymore, right? And so, they could have legal battles over the ashrams and, all these things. And I don't know if you can't prove, Daaji is the legitimate president because Chariji endorsed him, and there's no reversing that. And so I don't know if you're getting those ashrams back. I don't know, any of this stuff. But, like, you could make them feel bad about what they're doing. They're just, no one's calling them on their bullshit, right? And, I've done it here and, like, whatever the thing is. And the majority of people who are showing passion are the ones defending him, instead of the people speaking up, right? You have lurkers, people sitting on your hands, and you have to speak up, right? Because there's no, I'm not trying to cultivate a relationship with the dopes that are following Daaji. I'm not making content for them. These people that are coming and trolling me. And then the other people that were, that what I'm saying is the truth and you're just sitting there lurking, unwilling to speak up or whatever. And so, you need senior members and people to speak up and just say, in public, disavow this MNFer and the creeps around him. Like, that's what you need to do, if that's a possibility. And, like, again, you're not getting the organization back. You're not getting the ashram back, but you're speaking truth, and you're standing up for Chariji's memory, and you can, you can celebrate those things because people can pass on, like, how great the other three masters were, and this is a story. It's an interesting story because it has drama in it, and people are interested in that, and you can continue on and connect people and new people and your children and pass it on to other generations. So Chariji's memory and the work that he did and, the true essence of the system is there for people. But you have to call a thief a thief. You have to call a scumbag a scumbag. This guy was a scumbag. And I'm almost 100% sure that this story is true. Like, I haven't talked to the people and I don't know the story. I know there is a story that people around what was going on saw that Daaji and these fools, these scumbags, and Daaji is owing these guys. Like, now, maybe they're doing things he doesn't want them to do or, whatever, but he's beholden to them. They sabotaged Chariji's preparing this guy, Ajay, who I don't think would have been a good master either. But, that is what it is. but they sabotaged that. And this guy, I mean, they threatened his family, and lots of things happened with that. And so he was appointed, and they went after him, and they sabotaged it, and then they just gave him the option, Chariji, of picking with one of them, and he picked Kamlish. Maybe he was the best of the bunch, with these inner circle people. So these were people around. They betrayed their master, and they wouldn't allow him to make a representative. And like I said, I don't know if Ajay, maybe he was just bitter and being a punk because of things that had happened to him. But he said things and did things right off the bat that concerned people. And so, like, I don't know. I never knew him. But that one experience I had with him where he was berating the one of the volunteers, I was like, oh, this guy's, I'm glad he's not the master. I thought I had a higher opinion of Kamlish, so it seemed like the right thing. But, regardless of that, I don't think there was a solution because these guys already had designs on the mission. They already had their greedy little, whatever was going on. And they need to be called on it, right? Like, they need to be, express to them, what they've done to the rest of us because we believe in this. Like, they might not believe in the system, but we do. And you MNFers, you've taken away something we believe in. And you're just not going to walk in here and, have elite status and be, drag them down the rest of it, right? I mean, this is like tar and feather type of stuff. How strongly we feel about this and that they're not safe, like, or whatever it is, right? Like, that's how you would handle this, collectively. I don't care if you're, soft and spiritual and nice and all these things. There are things that, it was these women who, when I told the story of my family being in a flood, in the flood, and somebody opened up the flat above ours, and all those people had somewhere to go. And they said, you can go stay up there. So people came into our thing because they knew we were foreigners, and I had, 4 kids, and there was no taxis, there's no hotels, we're just stuck. And our flat's flooded, and there was nowhere for us to go. We didn't have family, any of these things. And they opened an empty flat by breaking the lock of the door. And the owners were horrible people who only spoke Tamil. Their daughter spoke English, and they were trying to throw us out like 3 days into the flood. And there was still we had nowhere to go. And our neighbor, who was the sweetest woman, and this doctor who was, an optometrist who wasn't an Abhyasi, they came up and they just started yelling at these people in a very aggressive way and saying, these are guests in our country and you guys have other properties and you don't need to be in this flat. And because these people came in accusing us because we weren't renting directly from them because they didn't speak English, and we had an Abhyasi woman who was sort of like she managed properties, and I was renting from her. She turned out to be a scumbag because her and her next door neighbor also managed this property for them. And these were Abhyasi women, and they came and yelled at me because there was this metal gate, and they had like a porch area, and I had left a bunch of stuff there in the porch area and locked up the gate, and they couldn't get in to remove the garbage. And we left and went to, renew our visas and, whatever. We went to stay at this other, ashram for a bit in Bangalore, right? And they yelled at me for locking it up in the garbage. They couldn't get to the garbage. And I let into them. It was like there was other things they were doing they were just kind of scumbags, right? But anyways, these women, this optometrist and this next door neighbor, she was just like the sweetest woman. Her husband was just nice people. And they threatened that everyone would move out of the building and they wouldn't get anybody to rent. And they had 2 buildings flat there. And these people just completely backed down, stuck their tail between their legs and left. And I was like, wow, I can't believe they were yelling like that. Like, I would never think this woman had it in her. But she was, standing up was for right. This was a, good, really spiritual people. Sweetest family. The husband was just really nice. They had this really saintly kid, just this happy kid. I told a story about their dog that he rescued, the whole thing, Bucky, the dog that, once he told me the story, Bucky would bark at us all the time. And then the guy told the story of, Bucky was this little black street dog that had lost its mom. These street dogs, they were dead dogs laying there all the time. They had all these, feral dogs. And the dogs are pretty sweet in the day, but they kind of got crazy at night. Like they bark at you. But this dog was crows were trying to eat it. And this guy just felt bad for it. He brought it home. But the dog was always kind of emotionally damaged. And, like it would bark and had a loud bark. And I have an image of Bucky on the roof. And we would come into the house and he'd bark at us. And the guy tells me this story. And after he's done telling me the story, Bucky comes up, puts his head on my lap, and I start petting him. It was like crazy, right? And he never barked at me and the two kids that were there. My son wasn't there, though. And so he still barked at my son. So we sat down and told him the story. And then Bucky went up and let him pet him. It was like, just this amazing thing that happened, right? And this was like an amazing family. And, and they backed these people down because they stood up for, like we were foreigners in the country. We didn't speak the language. And, I did, whatever. Like, I mean, it was just it was something I couldn't say anything to them. And I didn't have any sort of leverage or whatever. We were just sort of dumbstruck by these people showing up, in this crisis. They had this huge house. Like they had what would be considered $1 million house in America. But they were, rich property owners but they only spoke Tamil, and their daughter was kind of being rude to us. They were treating us like we were like homeless people that just came in and just, we had been paying them tons of rent, right? But our flat was unlivable because it flooded and there was just scum in there, and there was a crisis and, whatever. But these women, the point is that these nice women, like they were both really nice. And this one other woman was saintly. They just, they showed outrage and they just backed these people down. And the people caved because evil people always cave when you confront them. Bullies will, always cave. And, these guys are bullying people. Daaji and his cronies are bullying people, and there's, they're outnumbered. And then the passion that Chariji people have and the outrage that you should feel to Daaji wrecking this system, the power is with us. Like it's, they're just scumbags who Daaji wants to be a big man, a big guru. Like he's a little nothing, right? Little frickin', whatever manipulation happened for him to, his ego to, try to be something. And he's failing. Like nobody likes the guy. His books suck. His talks suck. He didn't even write the book. He had a team of people writing that book. He tells stories, he lies. He makes things up. People know. This guy's saying it. Everyone knows there, like all these people know. And so, there's just that's weakness. Like that, he's not coming from a position of strength. The love you have for Chariji would, wipe that away. That wipe this, these guys who are making profit off of collective, there was donation money, mission money that people donated to Chariji because they love Chariji, and he bought this big piece of property in in Hyderabad area, so they could build this ashram. So this is money that was Chariji directed donations, that was collective money from people who love the system. And there are people who were buying property around the ashram because they knew the property values were going to go up. And Daaji and Chariji came out and said, don't be scumbags, right? Like, we're going to try to buy as much of this property to create this, this spiritual center here. You're taking advantage of the mission, right? You're taking advantage of the master and the thing here by information you have that, that's not for you to try to manipulate for your own personal financial gain. You can buy property through the mission when, it comes out, but these people want to take advantage of this, they knew that the property values in that area, which were cheap because it was far away from the center of Hyderabad. But Chariji bought that property. And now they're taking that property that was bought by collective money, and they're running their own real estate scams, and this is what I've been told. And that's all weakness, right? It's for profit. It's, bean counter stuff. These aren't people who have faith and belief in the system. These aren't people that are, that have anything, other than their own selfish, egotistical goals. And you put the fear of frickin' God in them, and God, that's not the greatest saying, but I want to convey the message here. Of the kind of passion that we have on our side, and what we're willing to do to these guys who, are wrecking something. Like it's a check and a balance, right? They're not going to hear any other thing. They're not going to hear, well, please don't do this. And, They're not reasonable people. These are thugs. These are whatever it is. These are bullies and thugs, and these are arrogant pricks. And it can't be dealt with subtly, right? They can't be dealt with in a subtle way. Like, they got to know that this is, you know, the people are going to go ape shit on them, right? Like, this is not something where I'm going to write you a firm letter, sir. There's none of that. I mean, they're just oblivious to that. They're insulated themselves from your feelings and and whatever it is. And these were people who spent hours upon hours sitting in Chariji's cottage, and Chariji blessed them with, again, these wonderful paying jobs where they're millionaires and the heads of companies and whatever they were, right? Where they just they were blessed in a financial way, and all the spiritual benefits that were there, and they were given positions of work, and they were given volunteer work to do for the mission and all these things. And when he was alive, he said they were the worst people with the worst characters, and he couldn't do anything with them, and they were around him all the time. And he was, I mean, they were trying to do this stuff. They got, as soon as Chariji started to get older, they hooked up with the UN. They started doing all this stuff. They wanted to partner up with the devil, right? They wanted to partner up with the very entities that Babaji was sent here to destroy. Like, Babaji's work was to destroy the current system and the powerful, people and egregore consciousness of these people. The money power and the evil that's running the world. Like, Babaji was sent down to destroy the system, and these people couldn't wait to partner up with him, which means that they didn't read the books, or if they read them, they didn't believe them. So they're not real abhyastis. They don't have real faith, and they're now, selling off the system and watering it down in a way to, make it so it aligns with the scumbags and the evil people that are running the world, right? They want a seat at the table. They want to turn this into just some scumbag religion like all the other things. And like, you just got to say, hey, you ain't doing this, MNFers, right? This ain't happening. You think you're, and just, I mean, like, you think it's going to go this way. There needs to be an oppositional force. There needs to be people stand up, right? And say, no, you're not doing this, right? There just needs to be just a display of, where they're, like, scared, like, oh, man. They need to be scared. They need to be fearful of, the mob, the masses. The people are, like, outraged at what you did here. But, they've conned people with this idea, well, Daaji's the chosen representative, and he is. There's no doubt about that. And Chariji picked him, which he did. But, like, everyone can see what he is. You can see it. You just won't. You won't. Like, you're pretending it's like, okay, it's okay, there's a reason for this. And, you're not willing to fight for this. I mean, people fight for, like stupid stuff, right? Like, people will, I mean, riot and, protest over, like, stupid stuff, right? Just, I'm not talking about just, like, starvation and food things. I'm talking about, like, just changes, like, like a cut in pay, or, some kind of, in America, like, there's the Second Amendment right, and that people have the right to own guns. And if you try to take people's guns in America, they'll go apeshit. They'll go crazy. Like, they're just over guns. Like, it's things like that. Cultural things, right? You try to take away some of their cultural things, some of their privileges, and people go nuts. These are just superficial, materialistic thing, and these, of course, lower level consciousness people. But it's nothing like what Sahaj Marg is. Sahaj Marg is the hope of humanity. It's not worth fighting for. You're not willing to fight for it. You're not willing to, I mean, these guys are like pussies. They're not like, you're not going against, like, I mean, these guys are all weak pussies. They're not freaking tough guys or whatever. You're not willing to stand up to them, right, for all that Chariji's done for you and all that this system represents for the future of humanity. You're not willing to fight for that, right? Oh, I don't know. No, I'm just hemming, this fucking hemming and hawing, and I don't know. I can't make a decision. I mean, that's that's what I was referring to. That's why I took down the videos. Like, I don't respect any of you. Like, it's obvious what's happening. Make a freaking decision. Like, these so-called spiritual people are always, fence riders, and, make a freaking, take a stand in your life, right? Stand up for something. Like the way Chariji stood up for you. Like, he kept the wolves at bay. Like, he, kept all this stuff from happening. And then he couldn't anymore, and he left us because it was his time after doing this kind of work, and the frickin' scumbags, the jackals, have taken over. Babaji used to walk down the street with like these big Vikings. Like he loved the Danes. The Danish people love Babaji, and he loved the people from Denmark. These people are like, these women are like 6 foot tall. Like, these are big people, tall people. And he'd walk down the street with these European people, from, Germany and Denmark and, wherever it was, there was, and sometimes Americans. And he'd have a stick out to beat the dacoits, the robbers, like who came, if people came to rob him, like into, and the monkeys and stuff, right? They carry a stick around just in case he had to whack somebody in the head, right? I mean, this was like a 5 foot, tall guy who was, weighed like 120, 30 pounds, 40 pounds. And he was, with these giant, European, white people. He's walking down the street, with a stick just in case somebody tries to rob him. He can beat the crap out of him, right? Like he said these things, Like, he said, like people break into your house and these spiritual people, soft Indians, allow these guys to come in and molest their women and, these things. And he said, you got to go beat the crap out of him. I mean, Babaji, was very clear about this. Like he was, and he did things on a spiritual level, like not even having a, I mean, he could destroy people with just a thought, right? If he was ordered to do so by God when he came across this evil stuff, There was a story of Lalaji where there were people, there was a guy, and he learned to be able to steal other people's spiritual accomplishments, their spiritual energy. And he'd go up and hug people and just take all their spirit, like people who are saintly people, and be able to steal all their spiritual accomplishments. And Lalaji figured it out, like he was a young guy. And the guy came up to him, and Lalaji took everything he stole. And the guy immediately knew what happened. He fell at his feet, and Lalaji said, "No, you can't keep what you've stolen." The guy started crying and begging for forgiveness because he realized Lalaji was superior. There was another time that Lalaji went in and he was with an elder gentleman, and some guy started to disrespect them, right? Like just be like totally like rude and and the guy just doubled over in pain, and Lalaji did something to him that his stomach like hurt, and the guy just the guy was in agony. And he said, and Lalaji said, if you just had disrespected me, I would have accepted it, but you're disrespecting this elder, right? And so, like, there's things here. Babaji used to say the spirit of the Spartans. You come back with the shield or on the shield. And that was like a spiritual metaphor, like being a spiritual warrior. But some things are worth fighting for, and certainly with the advent of social media, I'm not, saying, I'm not recommending violence or any of these things. I mean, I don't know what it'll take, but, the idea that is there that something wrong has happened here. Something's, there's been a breakdown, and Daaji's a scumbag, and he's surrounded by people who are even worse, and they are doing things that are unconscionable, and it goes against the very fabric of Sahaj Marg. And deep down, they know they're scumbags. Like they might, they're lying to themselves, whatever they're doing to make it okay. But, in the face of outrage of people, which there should be outrage to this, people are, not just accepting it. And you know what? If there's nothing you can do, there's nothing you can do. But at least verbalize, this is something where you have to give it a shot. I talk about this with my regular viewers, that the system is corrupt, the overall system, not heartfulness, but the economic system, which I call the beast. And I know from Babaji's teaching that it's going to, resolve itself in the system collapsing, that the system has to be taken down and a new system with spirituality as base. And I'm quoting, semi-quoting from Babaji's My Vision chapter and what he said in Whispers, that a new system has got to come and take its place, like in the economic world. So you don't have to do anything. Like that's why I tell my viewers, why fight against it? Because there's nothing you can do. You can't fix this system. And so this idea that if you wake everyone up and you tell everyone, the truth about the people running the system, the system's going to come down and it's going to suck because we're all 100% dependent on it. And then people are going to have to figure it out. Babaji said in Whispers that people are going to have to learn to work with their hands again. And, there's going to be, it's going to be a scary, sucky time. in terms of these whispers, prophecies, and what Babaji said in reality at dawn. And the system, as bad as it is, you don't have to do anything because it's already going to resolve itself. But what's happened with heartfulness is something different because, you can, let me go back to this guy's comment here. Let me find it here. And he said here, the guy says, some messages which can either be verified or ascertained in an unreasonable way to be true or false. I'm sure the masters in the brighter world, this is the problem, would be keenly observing and making note of this, and while giving a long rope will act at the right time in the appropriate manner. What is the agency for acting? What is the agency for acting? In fact, I'll write a comment here. Let me write a comment and I'll read my comment to this guy. Okay, I got to go eat breakfast. I just posted this long comment here. Let me read it from my document. And so, I appreciate what this person's doing. So I'm not like this might come out more critical than I intended to, but the comment's there. Brother, I appreciate you posting these videos. There's a talk given by Chariji that I heard in Chennai maybe 2 weeks before he passed, where he stated that Sahaj Marg is not an extension of Hinduism and it stands on its own. I have not heard that talk or since on the internet. It seems to have been scrubbed by Daaji and his cronies. I would be grateful if that talk would be posted here if you can find it. And if any of you guys know where that talk exists, please let me know. It was like right before he died. It was very powerful, and it was, warning against all these things. I would like to comment also about what you say here. I'm sure the masters of the brighter world, this is what the person said. I'm sure the masters of the brighter world would be keenly observing and making note of this while giving a long rope will act at the right time in an appropriate manner. And this is what I say. I completely disagree with the sentiment, but I appreciate the Sahaj Margness of what you were saying and how you were saying it. But in this circumstances, I do not believe it is to be correct. That's a misspelling there. I should say I believe it to be correct. And the reason I'm saying this, in Sahaj Marg, there's it's gentle and it's a subtle system, but what I'm saying here is that this is not something for subtle. What I've said earlier in this video. From the brighter world, there's no time in linear fashion. Time is cyclical, and so the future is known. And Babaji and Chariji are if Babaji and Chariji are as great as we believe that they are, that is time is cyclical, so the future is known. And if Babaji and Chariji are as great as we believe, they are. Some of these things I should have corrected. I did voice to text and then I edited, but they knew what was going to happen with Daaji and his cronies. In fact, Babaji said in this message, September 30th, 1990, 9 a.m., this succession won't be easy. His successor must have broad shoulders and discernment regarding human behavior, especially the know-how to choose collaborators who he can trust completely in giving them responsibilities. The very nature of human beings is often so challenging and puzzling. It takes long experience with human behavior to make judicious choices. Errors are inevitable and sometimes necessary to start over on a stronger foundations. Everything needs to be learned and earned. And that to me indicates that Babaji, the word collaborators is a negative word. I know it can be used positively, but when I hear the word collaborators, it's always doing something nefarious. And he chose collaborators. And, it's kind of a slam dunk to me. Like in a very subtle way, Babaji's saying, especially when he says that errors are inevitable and sometimes necessary to start over on the stronger foundations. Well, that means that the mission's going to be, has to be reinvented because he's wrecked this mission. Because that's what's happened, right? So then I wrote this in the comment. It should be obvious to pretty much every sincere Abhyasi that Daaji has chosen the worst collaborators, criminal, even sociopathic. Based on everything we've been told and we know about the masters of the system and the divine hierarchy, in the divine hierarchy. Of course, they knew the kind of person that Daaji was, and they knew this would happen. This is not a surprise to them, and they could have stopped it if they wanted to. But as I've said, we're going to have to restart this thing on strong. And as they've said, and then as he said, they're going to have to restart this thing on stronger foundations after Daaji debacle has collapsed. Waiting for the divine hierarchy to do something about this to me is silly. What outside agency is going to restore Dharma here? The governments are corrupt, and Daaji has partnered with politicians like Modi and the RSS, and I'm sure bribed and bought protection against prosecution or even media embarrassment of things like a Brighter Minds scam and all the other nefarious activities. There is no one that is going to save this mission from the outside, as Daaji is the rightful president and Chariji endorsed him both publicly and legally. The only thing that can be done is for sincere Abhyasis to use social media to tell the truth about Daaji in a very blunt way. It would take thousands of voices of people verbalizing their disgust. I misspelled the word. With what he's done to the Chariji's legacy, as well as the practice itself and the gatherings, and how he has contaminated it with money, making practices, and degraded the system. People have to be strong and speak for what they believe in and fight for the mission and the master that they claim they love. People sitting on their hands waiting for the divine hierarchy to save the mission and not willing to speak up and fight for it, which to me is the real test. I am disgusted by how many of these people who claim to love Chariji, many of whom I saw weeping when they left his presence and openly proclaiming their love, have allowed Daaji to smear him the way he has. So many people see this but aren't willing to talk about it on social media or publicly, and lack the confidence to stand up for what they believe, as well as the courage to do so. There are no lions here. We live in the age of social media, where people talk truth to power all the time, and I know there are social pressures in India about not speaking up to authority, but Sahaj Marg is all about breaking paradigms and throwing away what is useless and inappropriate for a given circumstance. It's about doing what's right and not obeying some cultural taboo when something that is as important as the future of the mission is at stake. One must evaluate the reason that this has happened. If the Daaji debacle is part of some kind of divine plan, which I personally believe it is, and it is an experience the mission needs to go through, then what is the test that is being given here? It's not a test for the divine hierarchy or the government of the government of the world or the legal system or something like that. It's a test for Abhyasis to stand up for something that's worth fighting for. And as of now, everything is tragically tragically failing this test by sitting on their hands and waiting for someone else to speak up and do something. These are bullies and thugs that are hijacking the spiritual system, turning it into a religious cult. And at the very least, people could speak up anonymously on social media en masse and get the word out about the scumbaggery of what's being done here. Also, by ruining the Heartfulness brand, it will limit the amount of damage that Daaji can do. In my opinion, taking a fatalistic approach and standing by watching what's happening here is not the Sahaj Marg way. So I'm going to go eat breakfast, and I'll come back and wrap this up. Okay, just want to eat breakfast, and there's a few thoughts here. The first thing is, Sahaj Marg to me is the only thing worth fighting for. And those of us who are dedicated to the system and have experienced it. And, it's what Babaji said about it being around for thousands of years. I mean, if you believe in the Sahaj Marg teachings and you believe in the importance of these things, I mean, that's for an average person or someone who doesn't know about it, or, somebody who's just starting, I mean, that's one thing. But people who know, this is really what they say it is, right? It's worth fighting for, right? And whatever that means. And you start with speaking up about what's happened. And a few things I want to say here. There's two things here. One is, fighting for the system. The other thing is preserving the system. Realizing that, the official organization has gone south. So you have to, go underground and preserve what is there to be preserved, right? And so one thing is just naming what's happening. That's something that you do. You name something. You make it public. You call people on their bullshit, right? You call Daaji and his cronies on their bullshit. And you speak up for what's right. And that can be done on social media by everybody. It should be done, you should be able to put your name to it, but very least do it anonymously. I mean, thousands of Aviasi saying this so that people who have the doubts themselves start feeling comfortable about speaking up and entertaining those doubts. Like, people are suppressing those doubts because they don't want to go against Chariji's endorsement of Daaji. They don't want to do to Daaji what was done to Chariji. All these doubts and things that are weakening their resolve will be washed away when they see other people speaking up, right? And so that's the first thing that you would do. There is a in American sports, and I guess maybe even worldwide, but certainly in America, there is a term: you got to make the opposition feel you, right? You got to make them feel you. Like, if the other team is just scoring at will, and they're doing whatever they want to do, and they're just outplaying you, you have to get physical, right? You have to put up some resistance. We used to call this Ole defense in basketball. The matador would say Ole and take his cape and move his cape and get out of the way and let the bull run by him. But in sports, you don't play Ole defense. You have to stand in front of people. You have to prevent them from, you have to make them feel you, right? And Daaji and his cronies have to feel us, right? They have to feel the outrage. They're just sitting there comfortably getting away with, anything that they can then do, right? And they've been wanting to do this since the beginning. Like, Daaji couldn't cancel Chariji's birthday in 2016 and 15. And he couldn't cancel in 2017. But he's been able to get enough collaborators. He's bought people, he's won over people, and he's then making outside connections, and he's got this award now, and he's, feeling himself, and he's hobnobbing with Deepak Chopra and name dropping, and he's got celebrities going there, and he's got the world's biggest meditation hall, and, he's got this big forest, and he thinks he's made all these accomplishments. And so now he can start pushing his agenda. But he was pushing it right off the bat when he changed the name from Sahaj Marg to Heartfulness, which we know has been a disaster, because the only reason to do that, which I say over and over again, is to bring people out from outside of India. That Sahaj Marg is a perfectly acceptable term for Indians. It's everyone else that would react to it. But by his actions, he's pissed off everybody else, and he's not gonna. He doesn't appeal to people outside of India. He doesn't appeal to people inside of India, but even less so to people outside of India. And so the name change means nothing in terms of that. It's not bringing in new people. It's not softening the Sahaj Marg, making it more universal. It's a failure. But he's created this, parasitic organization where he's moving the assets from Sahaj Marg, Sri Ramchandra Mission. He's moving them to this other parasitic organization. I mean, the guy sent me stuff. I haven't really, I have the paperwork and showing that these are two different organizations, all these things, right? And so that's, he started doing this right off the bat. But he couldn't do it publicly because people love Chariji, and he had to wait, people were mourning, and, he couldn't just come in and do it. I mean, he did faster than he should have. But it was like grooming. He waited to see what he could get away with, and now he's just canceling Chariji's birthdays and, just saying he's getting whispers and saying he's merged with Tuktaji, and he could just say all these things. He can pimp out merch and statues and rearrange the teachings and change the maxims and do all the things he's done. And there's no resistance. And the resistance that's there, they've easily crushed. And they've, intimidated people and do whatever. And, you got to make them feel you. Like, you just have to. Like, again, I don't know what the right course of action here is. But you have to give that. If there's something worth fighting for, it's this. So make them feel you. Like, you ain't getting away with this MNFers, right? Like, this is, our passion and our numbers are superior to what you got. You have money and power and connections. We have, the support of God, of the guy who's supposed to be, the guy who's in charge of the universe. And this, we have this is what we have on our side, the passion. And we're willing to, you're just doing some scumbaggy freaking scams that, people will walk away from that. You surround yourself with weak criminals that will bail on you as soon as things get tough, as soon as they feel threatened, so you make them feel you. And that's what needs to be done. And, it starts with just posting things on social media and just calling them out as BS. And, people have been unwilling to do that. So that's, that shows you that their resolve and their love for Chariji and their appreciation for the system is nothing. Like they, what they might say or pretend to be, they're not willing to fight for this thing. And if you've watched my other videos, you know that I've said over and over again to people in the truth community that the governmental system cannot be fixed. And this goes back to, I was saying this earlier, but I'm going to, elaborate on it here. This goes back to Babaji saying that the old system has to come down before a new system takes its place. But also you can see that without even understanding or knowing Babaji's teachings, because it's a corrupt system. The economic system is a usury-based system, and it's built for short-term gain and to make, a few people wealthy. But it is a pyramid scheme. It's a Ponzi scheme. It's usury. It's a debt-based currency, and it's unsustainable. And the disconnect from God, the breaking down of the family, all the things that have happened in our modern-day system, the Wi-Fi and things that Babaji's talk about in whispers, being the electromagnetic pollution and money power and these things, they're all transitory and they can't last. None of it's sustainable. It's all built for short-term gain, and it's not aligned with the divine principles, and it's going to collapse of its own depravity. The moral breakdown, how weak and stupid people have become. There's nothing that you need to do. You need to protest. You don't need to fight back. You just watch the system collapse, and you prepare for what's going to happen next. That's the whole idea behind my channel, Pockets of the Future, right? This is, my videos on Pockets of the Future. That's the idea behind it, which came from a Shruti, a divine message that I received from, this meditation. Like I downloaded, the system was, this teaching was downloaded into the system years and years ago, which is now proven to be, more and more valuable because of the things that have happened with Daaji and the mission, all these other things. But I say, to people who watch my regular videos, taking down the American government, the global government, or the UN, or any of these things, is useless because it's going to come down of its own depravity. What you could do, you had one leverage. We had one leverage, which is boycotting things, which we see working a little bit. They've done it with Bud Light recently. There's some of this stuff that can happen. Boycotting it. But really, they can't provide you with the lifestyle because the system is bankrupt. And so they don't have a choice. No matter how much you protest, they know you don't like it. The people running the system, they know you're going to go freak out. They know that you might, go apeshit on them, right? Like they always fear the mob. The people running the system are a small amount of people that have money and power, and they always fear the mob. I mean, Daaji fears it. Everyone does. People in power always fear that the people are going to rebel against them. And they know that that's a possibility, but they can't do anything about it because they can't provide you with the lifestyle that you've had. Like it's not sustainable. And so they don't have a choice. So they're just going to do whatever they're going to do to try to save some fragment of the system and save their power and their whatever. And whatever they have to do to depopulate the world and, roll out biological weapons like they did, COVID, anything they have to do to keep the thing going, they'll do that, right? Because wars and the thing that happened now with, Russia and Ukraine and all this stuff with Israel and all these things that are going on, World War III, any things that are prophesized in Whispers of the Brighter World, right? These, ATOM will wreck the world, nuclear power, and there's going to be nuclear war in these things. And so this is all, anything they can do to sort of control the situation. And they're also, mad with it, right? They're not high-functioning people. But like I said, there's no real leverage here because they can't give you what you want. Even if they wanted to, and maybe they even do want to, some of them, they want to keep it going the way it is, they can't do that. It's not sustainable. So, my position has always been just prepare for what happens after the collapse. That's the whole idea behind Pockets of the Future and these videos, that the system is inevitably going to collapse like they always do. Historically, empires fail. And we're at the cusp of that. I don't know when it's going to happen, but it's something clearly indicated by Babaji that's on the horizon. And just by looking at what has happened, how degraded people are and how degraded the whole system is, it's, it's collapsing right before our eyes. So preparing for what is going to be next, and also preparing to build something better with spirituality as its base, as instructed by Babaji. He gave us these teachings, but also the ideas have to be there. Like, the idea of, okay, we're going to rebuild this system, and people who are prepared for this because they've been prepared spiritually by the Sahaj Marg system and method, and they've read the literature, can say, okay, now we got to build a system with spirituality as its base. So it becomes a kind of a time loop, right? So there's that. And so the current system, our economic system, can't be saved. And, Daaji has a stranglehold on the Sahaj Marg organization. And yet he, he's, the fact that he didn't just come in and do it, he had to win people over, and other things that have been indicators. For example, when I first started to post these things in my Journey series, Mr. S reached out to the one preceptor I had contact with in America, and he and a couple of these economic thugs that, whatever, wanted to talk to me. I said, I'm not talking to that clown. But I said, I'll send a message to Daaji, and I sent him a 4-hour message about the Brighter World scam and these things. Of course, he's ignoring it. But they were trying to rein me in, right? They didn't want people saying what I was saying. And, again, they've just copyrighted a video because of the title. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that they're trying to prevent these ideas getting out there to Abhyasis, because they know once people see them, it becomes an emperor has no clothes. And so if enough people post on social media, they're obviously scared of that. He's playing the MasterCard, and, the idea that Chariji suffered so much because people didn't accept him, and that you're going to suffer some sort of punishment. And also they're pretty forceful about intimidating people to speak up, that they're, trying to prevent people from saying what pretty much everyone kind of sees, has to see on some level, that he's thrown Chariji under the bus and these things. And so that's fragilely held together. And if enough people start to speak up on the internet, the backlash from it, and, you got to make them feel you, right? You got to make them freaking feel you. That's like how it has to go. And it can't be like one person doing it. It becomes pointless, especially someone like me out in the periphery. And I don't, so like I could do this all day, but this isn't, I do this for work. This is my job, and I don't make, the money I'm making on this channel is nothing. I can't do this as a living, right? Like I have to make other videos and things like this. And so, it has to be on everybody else to speak up. It just starts with a few people, and we're seeing that a little bit here. And again, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what the outcome is. I don't know if it's going to change anything, but at least you did it. At least you stood up for Chariji. At least you fought for him and all that he did for you. You spoke up for him. Think about, let's say the person you love the most in your life, or, one of your loved ones, and somebody was trashing them and speaking badly about them and wanting to cancel their birthday celebration and erase all their work and minimize their accomplishments and, and make you all forget about that person. You can no longer talk about the person and don't mention the person's name and, these things, right? And like all the things that are being done to Chariji, being done to someone in your family, your wife, your husband, your kids, whatever it is. What would you do, right? What would you do to defend one of your loved ones? Imagine what's being done to Chariji and being done to somebody that you love, right? I mean, you say you love Chariji, but like, whatever, he was the master. And maybe he was like all powerful and that Daaji's the appointed master or whatever. But forget about who Daaji, you think Daaji is or who he is, based on his title, but just his behavior. What if Daaji was disparaging somebody you love the way he is, right? Would you not speak up for that person, right? If he was slandering that person, saying things that weren't true, all those things, right? Would you not speak up for him? I mean, look at what people are willing to do, coming to threaten my YouTube channel, threatening to report me, harassing me, things like that, over Daaji. Like, telling me I'm full of hatred. I mean, there's comments, I could read all of them. I was making a video about this, and I just, I lost energy because it was like the 13th video, and I needed to go back to my regular videos, which I'm still, struggling to get back to because there's this unresolved thing. Hopefully this will be it for me, right? But, it's these people are willing to push back against me talking about Daaji and speaking truth about him, that they should be speaking up themselves if they were, worth anything. But instead they're defending that scumbag. And where are the people defending Chariji? I mean, there's a handful of people, but I mean, not in a way that needs to be done. Call it like you see it. Be willing to, use the proper language and, dive into the thing in a way that you got to make them feel you. So my wife and I went for a walk. It's cold out. Today it was like 60 degrees yesterday, but it's snowing. We were a little bit surprised. It snowed last night. We went for a walk with the dogs, and something came to me. I was telling my wife about this, and I wrote another part to that comment, is what I'm getting to here. And I said this: I just want to add one thing here. If we are to believe that Babaji can not only predict the future and the prophecies of the whispers of the brighter world, and talk about how things are going to be even in the very distant future, as well as the prophecies he gave in my vision chapter of Reality at Dawn and other things that he and Chariji said over the years, but also that was not only prophetic, but this was actual work that he was instructed to carry out to manifest this future, then how could he see the disaster that is Daaji? How could he not see the disaster that is Daaji and Heartfulness? We could say that Chariji was limited because he was still in the physical body. When he appointed Daaji, he had limited choices in a short period of time to make a successor. So he chose what he considered the best available, or a person he was pressured into. But in either case, that's understandable. But in terms of Babaji, he was in another dimension, beyond time and space, where he is clearly seeing the future based in messages from whispers. And so, of course, he knew it was going to happen. And so if the masters let this happen, it's not their work, but ours to make the correction. At the very least, it showed the kind of people we all are to allow the system to be wrecked in the way it has. So that's pretty much it, right? So, there's nothing more to say. It is a test. I mean, I would assume this is some sort of a test. And I would say the majority of Abhyasis have failed in some way. I don't know whether I failed. I don't know what else I could do. But, of course, it was easier for me because I was ostracized. And I'm always been on the periphery. And it's what I do. This is right in my wheelhouse, right? And so, I'm not going to claim that I'm some, great person when this is, kind of my thing. I mean, it's not, it wasn't as really a struggle for me. It was a struggle only in the sense that I saw the work that Daaji was made into a master on a spiritual level. Internally, he was placed in the central region. He was given access to powers and techniques and things that the master would have. And he was blessed and given permission and all these things, right? When I was made a preceptor years ago, and, the last sitting, I had the worst possible thoughts. This is 1995, I believe. And I had the worst possible thoughts. And when Chariji was giving me the final clean, I went to Chariji's house. And I was having horrible thoughts. And it felt like during the meditation, there was a tornado, gust of wind that kept on repeating. Like a tornado was being pulled from my back to my front, and everything was being pulled out in a vacuum. Like there was a giant vacuum cleaner just sucking out every bit of grossness that was in my system, or wherever the points he was cleaning. And it was like this powerful force, and it was just all this stuff is flying through my system. And some bad thoughts and feelings and whatever. Really uncomfortable. And then I had these thoughts about my mom, and I got tears in my eyes. And my mom and I were never close, but she was a religious lady. And, I felt gratitude and, whatever it was. And when I ended up going back to America a couple weeks later, my mom, I called her and I told her, I didn't tell her this part, but the part about seeing her in the vision or in the sitting. But she ended up starting, and she was a longtime Catholic, right? So that was all kind of interesting. But anyways, then I felt this moment of bliss, just this incredible, just happiness. And it was, Don Savarin said that he put a drop of power in point 2 so I could be a preceptor. And then Chariji chanted, and he chanted something, and it sounded like 1,000 voices. It was more than him just chanting. It was in Hindi or some foreign language. And it sounded like 1,000 voices. And it was like a profound experience. I went and talked to Don Savarin Like he went to talk to me after I was made a preceptor, and he told me things I might need to know. He gave me some tips, and I told him that, right? And he said, "Yeah, did you tell Chariji you heard 1,000 voices?" I'm like, "No." And I said, "What were the 1,000 voices thing?" He said, "What are you talking about?" I said, he's chanting something at the end. It sounded like 1,000 voices, like, I mean, more than that, like just, it was more than just him, right?" And Don said, "Oh, you should tell Chariji that, right?" And so I was saying goodbye to Chariji. I said, when you did the last sitting, when you were chanting, like Don Severin said he was giving me permission in Hindi to do the work. It was some kind of thing that they did. And I guess he didn't do this for everybody. Something they don't do anymore. I don't know. There would be other preceptors would have to say if they heard the chant, like Chariji chanted afterwards. But I said, it sounded like 1,000 voices. Chariji patted me on the shoulder. He patted me on the shoulder and smiled and left. He didn't say anything. But it was substantial. And I don't even know why I started telling this story. I have to go back and listen why I started this thing. Okay, I went back and listened to it. So I was talking about how Daaji was given access to all this stuff. Like that was just me being a provisional preceptor at point 2. And I started to take it, really seriously. Like I'm like, oh my God, this was like a real thing. And then Chariji and I went over and prayed over Prasad together. And I was just like, man, this is like incredible. Like, and I had some experiences, certainly my first sittings, but I molded my behavior. I became less of an a-hole. I became softer. I tried to act spiritual. I was trying to play the part because I didn't want to. I'm like, this is, I got responsibilities. I'm a preceptor now, just a entry-level position, and I got to live up to it. I don't want to bring, do something to embarrass the mission, these things, right? And so I acted in a way that wasn't, I'm a kind of a difficult personality. I tried to be better than I was, different than I was, right? Just because it was important to me to live up to this thing. And I thought, I had to like restrain some of my tendencies or whatever, which, have come out during I've thrown that to the side and just, be honest with who I am, not pretend to be something I'm not, right? But it was for good reason. But anyways, that was just limited. That was one limited experience where I was made a provisional preceptor, and eventually permission was rescinded, which sucks for me, but it made sense. But again, it was limited. But I saw the work that was being done to Daaji, and they spared nothing as far as I could tell. Daaji was given everything to be successful, and when Chariji passed away, Daaji had all of it. He had the energy. He was walking in. He was the master of the system. And he had, there's no reason for him. I mean, whatever his ego was, whatever his character qualities were, whatever some scars, whatever it was. But there was no reason for him not to be successful and become at least the best version of himself as a master and carry it on. Of course, he was put into difficult circumstances and all the rest of it, which I've said. There's some things that you can excuse Daaji for because of the nightmare situation that was there with all these people. All the people around him wanted to do this, and they wanted to defile the mission. The people who are defiling the mission, they wanted to do this for years when Chariji was alive. They couldn't do it under Chariji, right? And so, it was there. But he had it all. He had the potential to do all these things. But he chose a lower path. And there weren't any safeguards in place because, Babaji said to Chariji, and this is one thing I had trouble getting over, that Chariji, when he was made the Parshad, he was Babaji's successor, but he was put in this, there's the Mahaparashad and there's the Parashad, which is, the Mahaparashad is above the Parashad. And Babaji was a Mahaparashad, but he gave Chariji this position, this cosmic functionary. And there's only one person in the world that's in these two positions. It's like president and vice president or whatever. And when he made Chariji the Parashad, Chariji said, okay, I'm ready to die now. And Babaji said, why? He said, well, I don't want to fall. And Babaji said, well, I didn't make you for you. I made you to be my successor. You have work to do. And in your case, there's no chance of you falling. And I took that as no master could fall. That all the line of succession, it was like they were giving up their ability to choose to do the wrong thing. When you signed on to be the master, you're giving up your individual ability to choose wrong. That's how I took that. And that's how I understood it to be. So I thought that Daaji couldn't do wrong, in that sense. But clearly that wasn't the case. I was, whatever I believed, maybe Chariji couldn't do wrong, but Daaji certainly can, because he has. And so he's failed, and he's done this. And there's no, because the master of the system has so much power, and it's expected that the master is going to be a master, that he's going to be the president and the master, that he would, if he failed, there was no fail-safe. There's no checks and balances. There's nothing that you can do legally. There's nothing to do within the organization to oust this guy. And let's say you could. Let's say we could all get together and vote Daaji out. Well, how would we choose the next guy? Are we capable as a group of people to make and pick the next master? No. We can't, like I was saying in the last video, I don't know how to make a master to you. I don't know how to make a preceptor to you, right? And so, there's spiritual techniques that you have to be able to do. And so there's a void there. Like the master has to be made by the divine hierarchy, and then we'd have to figure out who that person was. And, people suck so bad, there's just no way. And so there's no solution to this issue on an organizational level. But you can speak up for, so you can call out evil behavior, and you can talk truth to power. And that's all you can do. And that's what we can do here. But you have to have the courage. You have to be lions. You have to have the courage and confidence in your ability to read the situation. You have to have, the ability to stand up to the arguments and the false stuff that they're going to put on you, and any kind of, the intimidation that they've done to people and things like this. And, mostly you just need to speak up and say, that they've taken this in the wrong direction. Use your words, your particular style, and you do it, right? And enough people do it, and there's enough of a, movement that they can't ignore it anymore. And now there's a check, and now instead of a system without any checks and balances, there's now a check to what Daaji's doing. Like, there's an outrage that people, will just out and out revolt on his ass, right? Like, that this is, there needs to be some fear from them. They need to fear something. There needs to be some leverage. Again, I'm not saying that you can make him become a master, and you can limit the amount of damage, and you can demand things like, all right, we want to celebrate Chariji's birthday. F you, Daaji. If you don't want to do it, we'll put a preceptor up there and give a sitting. People already did that when they showed up after he canceled Chariji's birthday, and there's like 30,000 people there, and they showed up anyway, and Daaji sulked the whole time because there's nothing he could do. Because, he said only local people should come, but people came from everywhere, and he was sulking, right? And, and just not obey what he's saying, right? Just say, no, you're not the guy. Whatever way that you can fight back. Like each person can figure out, you don't have to listen to him anymore. He's violated his authority. Like he should be just ignored. Like, people ignore the, powers that be all the time. Like he should be, a person that's, got no authority. Like he's lost his audience. He's lost the mission. It's just what presidents worry about, politicians worry about, right? He's lame duck and no one's paying attention to him anymore. Like he's been, totally denuded, right? Like he just, like that could be the case. Nobody listens to him, like nobody obeys him. And that's very easy in India, where people pretend to obey, but, very passive aggressively will just not. And so, that needs to be like just, and all of it, right? There's things that people can do. There's strategies, and I'm not going to, some of them I know about, things that you can do on the internet, things you can do with a YouTube channel, things that you can do to just undermine everything, right? And, make them feel you, make them realize that we're not just going to let this happen. You're just not going to walk through here without, some resistance, that there's a resistance here, and we're not down with what you're doing. We see what you're doing, and we're going to name it. And I know that, they're rationalizing this. They believe in their own BS, right? You can see it. Like, they know it's a lie, but they kind of still, they're deluding themselves. And so we're not allowing you to do that. We're not falling for your delusion. We're not, going along with the emperor has no clothes lie. We're going to speak truth. And it's going to be unpleasant for them, right? And then just see how it affects them. See it affects what they're doing. and, just continue on with it. And so there's a pathway here. I don't think you're going to do it. I don't think people are, I just think there's too much weakness. And I think that people claim to love Chariji, but they love Chariji for what he did for them, but they didn't love Chariji for what they could do for him. And they've allowed his, legacy and his name to be tarnished and the mission to be wrecked. And they love Sahaj Marg for what it could do for them, but they're not willing to fight for it. I mean, that's how it's playing out right now. And that's probably the worst part, because that's not Daaji's fault. If Daaji is a planned element, if Daaji was supposed to do what he's doing, like this was all part of a plan and he's doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing, then he's taken care of. He's performed his task, as lowly and scumbaggery as it is, as villainous as it is. It's the task that he was instructed to perform. If the clowns around him, his cronies, are doing what they're supposed to be doing, because they were supposed to do this, right? Even though it's not, keeping the line, the line intact and all this stuff. But if that's the case, then it's the people who are allowing it to happen who had a choice. Like you have a choice. Like Daaji didn't have a choice, and Babaji didn't have a choice, and Chariji didn't have a choice. Babaji and Chariji had no choice but to appoint Daaji or some other person who was not up for the task. Like, I don't know who they could have appointed. I don't know of somebody who could have done a better job. Like, I kind of know all the people to some extent. I was in India for 3 years, and I know they're great preceptor Nabyasis, but I don't know any of them who would have been able to continue on what Chariji was doing, given all the evil and all the, scumbaggery that was around this, Like, this was meant to happen. So Chariji and Babaji didn't have a choice, and this was, part of a divine plan, so that was, they didn't have a choice with that. And the masters never really have any choice. They can only do what they're told to do. They can only do what God wants them to do. But Daaji, again, I don't think he had any choice but to fail. Aside from him not having the character qualities, he was put in an impossible position. And, he's stupid. He's not smart. Like, he's like nowhere near as, intelligent and perceptive as Chariji was. And he's not good at things, right? I mean, he was good as a preceptor. And, he was smarter before. He's gotten dumber for some reason. But, like, he didn't have the capability. Like, he just didn't have the level, no matter what spiritual gifts and talents he was given, he didn't have the ability to, navigate and deal with the situation that's here. Like, I don't think he really had a choice but to fail. I mean, I think he wanted to from the beginning. I don't think he, ever took it seriously. I don't think he really believes in the Sahaj Marg system. I don't think he believes in certainly if he's changing the maxims and he's changing the name of the thing, like, and I think there's a criminal element there, whatever his character flaws are, but I don't think he could have ever been successful. So he doesn't have a choice. And so you have a choice. That's the only thing. You can allow this to happen, or you could speak up. You can go along with it, or you can resist it. And that's the choice. We all have that choice. That's clearly a choice, because some of us have resisted it, and we've done better than the people who are going along. My spiritual condition is better. I feel congruent. I don't feel, I'm not conflicted. When I make these videos and I say these things, there's no conflict there. When I see the thing for the way it is, there's no conflict there. I'm not divided. I was in the beginning, but, when I felt weak was when, I saw both things. I saw that Daaji had been given the permission by Chariji, and I saw the work that had been done on him, and I had the belief that the master couldn't be corrupted. But then I saw and it was like this, how do you resolve and reconcile these two things? That was when I felt weak. That's when I was bummed out and whatever. But then when I just named it for what it was and I spoke truth, everything aligned. Things came to me, and I've been taken care of spiritually. My sittings are great, and my condition is great. It's better than it was, and everything's gone in a positive direction, right? And so, I can speak from my personal experience that once I did what I was supposed to do, then everything fell into place. And so they're all doing what they're supposed to do. They had no choice. But what are you doing? Like, are you hemming and hawing and like this, Are you just taking a stand? Like, take a stand, right? And, see what there is to be seen and just name it. And, this idea that you don't criticize the master, throw out all these cultural things and stand up and be a lion and do what you're supposed to do. Figure out what you're supposed to do and do it. Pray, ask, the master to show you what you're supposed to do. Have the courage to ask, And then when they show you, do what you're supposed to do. And I don't know what that is. You got to find that personally, but you haven't done that yet. You're still waiting to be rescued. You're waiting for the great pumpkin to save you. That's a metaphor for Charlie Brown and Donald Trump, the thing there that I've talked about on my other channel. But, be able to take a stand, stand up for something in your life, right? And if there's anything to take a stand for, it's this. Okay, I think that's hopefully it. I just had some residual things, and there's things I felt I left out in my long voiceover. No one's watching that video. It's got 200 views and 2 comments. I've done my part. I got to go back and start making my videos. And, I just want to get over this thing, right? I'm on the periphery. I'm not I was always on the periphery of the mission, and now I'm not a heartfulness person. I'm not associated with the regular organization. I want no contact or connection with Daaji and the people there. I'm not, I don't really want any contact with Abiasis one way or another, whether they're disgruntled or not. People have to realize that the heartfulness thing is one thing and the Sahaj Marg thing is another. I do Sahaj Marg. You're waffling between the two. I'm doing Sahaj Marg and what I call Gratefullness because, the official title is, the official president is Daaji, but what, the essence of Sahaj Marg, I'm doing that. And, you have to break free from heartfulness to really, truly do it. And so, you guys all can figure out your own way, but that's a truth. The organization of the Sri Ramchandra mission and the Sahaj Marg method that is being, the heartfulness thing is a parasitic organization and spiritual entity that is draining the energy and blocking the efficacy of the system. And as long as you're engaging with the parasitic entity, you're not really doing Sahaj Marg anymore. You're a part of the heartfulness problem. Whether you claim to, whether you say things about Daaji or you have protests about it, you got to cut yourself free from, this cancerous growth, this malignancy that's Daaji and heartfulness. Again, I'm not advising people to do it. I'm saying that this is what inevitably everyone's going to have to realize. It's not it's not where the energy, it's no longer the source of the energy. You have to connect directly because there's no other choice. And it's a benefit to do it because you have to work harder now. The master isn't going to do everything for you. And I think that's part of the problem. People became so weak because they expected Chariji to be so strong. And that's why this problem is here. That you let Chariji do what you should have done. You let Chariji do for you what you should be doing for yourself, right? And so that's the benefit we have now. You have to work harder. And, and you have to take a stand, and you have to be strong, and you have to, whatever. And be more, you have to use critical thinking skills and learn to assess things and, no longer just be obedient slaves to not just slaves, but, it's like you don't even have the ability to decide things for yourself, right? There are people that wanted Chariji to do everything, right? Chariji, should I brush my teeth at 10 o'clock or 10:05, and how long should I brush them? Or I have a job now, and there's another job. Which job should I take, right? He was marrying people, naming their kids. All these things, which is part of the Indian culture. But why can't you do that for yourself, right? Why can't you figure out these things for yourself? Why would you, why are you not able to rise up to level? Why can't you figure out and connect to God and your child to name your own kids? Right? Why can't you name your own kids? Why can't you find your own spouse? The arranged marriages are great, especially for young people. But shouldn't you be able to just find the right person? People, if you can't, then what good are you, right? People in the future, you can't have the master do everything for you. You make all your decisions. What you do is you put things in front of the master, and you allow that, this quandary to change you so that your perceptive abilities get better, and you learn to use your heart more and more, and connect internally, and figure out what to do. But, this idea of having the master do everything for you, that's great when you have a great master, but it's not great because what are you developing, right? You're developing, dependency and the inability to utilize your own spiritual sovereignty and energy to do it for yourself, right? And if Chariji, created a problem, it was that. He did too much for people, as did Babaji. And it created weakness and dependence, and people, didn't develop their own abilities and talents. And learn to do do masterly work themselves. And ultimately, master, you are at the real goal of your life, but my goal. You're an example of what I'm trying to achieve, right? We're becoming you, maybe not the master of the system, but the best version of ourselves. And that includes the ability to connect to the divine and make decisions and let our hearts guide us and make the right choices, so we're not bugging the master every 2 seconds and, what do I do now, master? What do I do now? What I can't think for myself, master. What do I do now, right? Like, that's the problem that's created. And you can see it now. It's a huge weakness. It's a hole in the system. It's a hole that Daaji's exploited in these people, because he just thinks you all sit on your hands and you allow it to happen because you can't think for yourself and take a stand because, you don't have a backbone and you don't have the ability for critical thinking skills, and you don't have a, connection to the divinity within you to guide you and tell you what to do. You're sitting around waiting for the great pumpkin that never ever comes. Again, a reference to Linus and the great pumpkin. The great pumpkin's a myth and it doesn't ever come. And, if you're going to, this is a point where you have to be a Westerner, right? Western mind, Eastern heart, and be able to discern for yourself. Anyways, toodles. Only spirituality will save this world. It's paramount, definitely pointing from the Apocalaughs. And the Ascension, everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.